You don't lack motivation, you lack standards. Motivation is not missing, it is irrelevant. Motivation fluctuates by design, standards do not. When output changes daily, the issue is not desire, it is tolerance. Standards define what behavior is acceptable, motivation does not. Motivation reacts, standards enforce. When standards are low, any effort feels optional. Optional effort produces inconsistent results. Inconsistent results are blamed on motivation. That diagnosis is incorrect. The system is functioning as configured. Low standards allow negotiation. Negotiation introduces delay. Delay becomes habit. Motivation is then requested to compensate. It cannot. Motivation was never meant to carry structure. Structure creates repetition. Repetition produces results. When standards are clear, behavior stabilizes. Stability removes the need for motivation. Most people attempt to feel their way forward. Standards do not depend on feeling. They define action before emotion appears. This difference matters. Motivation is temporary energy. Standards are permanent limits. Energy fades, limits remain. When limits are weak, motivation is asked to do impossible work. It fails, not because it is broken, because it was never the solution. That is the core rule. This problem goes unnoticed because motivation is visible. Standards are not. People can feel motivation. They cannot feel standards. When progress stalls, motivation becomes the obvious suspect. It feels logical to blame what is missing emotionally. Standards operate quietly. They do not announce themselves. Most people never define their standards explicitly. They assume effort will regulate itself. It does not. Without defined standards, behavior defaults to comfort. Comfort sets the baseline. That baseline feels normal. When output drops, the change feels circumstantial. Fatigue is blamed. Stress is blamed. Motivation is blamed. The absence of clear standards makes inconsistency appear external. The system seems unpredictable. In reality, it is perfectly consistent. It produces exactly what the standards allow. Low standards permit excuses. Excuses feel reasonable. Reasonableness reduces urgency. Nothing breaks immediately. Tasks are delayed. Requirements soften. Life continues. Because consequences are delayed, the issue is ignored. The system adapts downward gradually. Reduced output becomes acceptable. Acceptability becomes expectation. At this stage, motivation is repeatedly summoned to override structure. It cannot. Motivation cannot compensate for undefined limits. Another factor reinforces this blindness. Motivation is culturally emphasized. Standards are not. People are taught to feel inspired, not to define non-negotiables. Inspiration is celebrated. Enforcement is avoided. Standards feel rigid. Rigidity is framed as unhealthy. This framing protects low standards. It allows people to remain comfortable while appearing intentional. By the time frustration becomes obvious, standards have already eroded. Motivation is exhausted from doing the wrong job. The real issue remains untouched. That is why the problem stays hidden. The misunderstanding is structural. People believe standards restrict freedom. They believe standards limit expression. This belief is incorrect. Standards do not restrict behavior. They define minimums. Minimums protect consistency. Without minimums, behavior negotiates daily. Negotiation favors comfort. Comfort lowers output quietly. Standards are also misunderstood as intensity. People assume high standards require extreme effort. They do not. Standards are not about maximum performance. They are about minimum execution. This distinction is ignored. When standards are confused with intensity, they are avoided. Avoidance keeps standards vague. Vagueness feels flexible. Flexibility feels safe. Safety reduces pressure. Reduced pressure lowers results. Another misunderstanding follows. People think motivation creates standards. They believe feeling driven leads to higher limits. The opposite is true. Standards create motivation. Clear expectations reduce resistance. Reduced resistance allows momentum. Momentum generates energy. When standards are undefined, motivation has no direction. Energy disperses. Dispersed energy feels like laziness. It is not. It is misalignment. Another error reinforces the cycle. People assume standards must feel right emotionally. They wait for internal agreement. Standards are not emotional contracts. They are operational rules. Rules do not require agreement. They require enforcement. Waiting for emotional alignment weakens standards. Weak standards invite exceptions. Exceptions become patterns. Patterns define outcomes. Standards are also mistaken for punishment. They are seen as self-judgment. In reality, standards reduce self-judgment. They replace debate with clarity. Clarity removes confusion. Confusion drains energy. The misunderstanding persists because standards feel uncomfortable initially. Discomfort is mistaken for harm. It is not. It is simply the absence of negotiation. And without negotiation, progress begins.
The system responds to limits, not intention, not enthusiasm. Limits determine behavior. Standards are limits applied consistently. When standards are clear, behavior aligns automatically. Decision-making is reduced. Reduced decisions lower friction. Lower friction increases execution. This is mechanical. The system does not evaluate effort emotionally. It measures compliance. If standards permit skipping, skipping occurs. If standards prohibit skipping, execution follows. The system adapts to whatever is enforced. When standards are low, output becomes optional. Optional behavior produces irregular input. Irregular input prevents calibration. The system remains inefficient. Raising motivation does not solve this. Motivation adds energy, not structure. Energy without structure dissipates. Standards provide structure. Structure organizes energy. Once organized, energy compounds. Another mechanism operates simultaneously. Standards train expectation. Expectation shapes identity. When minimum behavior is enforced daily, identity stabilizes around reliability. Reliability reduces internal resistance. Resistance consumes energy. Lower resistance increases capacity. Capacity allows consistency without strain. This is why standards feel difficult initially. They interrupt existing patterns. The system resists interruption. That resistance is temporary. Once standards are repeated, the system recalibrates. Recalibration changes tolerance. Tasks that once felt heavy become neutral. Neutral tasks require less motivation. Motivation becomes unnecessary. The system prefers predictability. Predictable input allows optimization. Optimization increases output without additional effort. This is not discipline through force. It is discipline through configuration. Standards configure behavior. Motivation reacts to circumstances. Standards operate regardless. When standards are enforced, behavior stops responding to mood. Mood becomes irrelevant to execution. The system shifts from reactive to procedural. Procedures produce repeatability. Repeatability produces progress. Confidence reinforces standards. A loop is created. This loop is stable. Without standards, the opposite loop forms. Motivation spikes. Effort increases briefly. Standards remain weak. Behavior collapses. Frustration follows. Motivation is blamed. Nothing changes. The system repeats the same cycle. Standards are the interruption. They replace chaos with order. Order produces results. This is how the system actually works.
This requires definition. Standards must be explicit. Vague intentions do not function as limits. Limits must be measurable. Define what is non-negotiable. Not ideal behavior, minimum behavior. Minimums are enforceable. Ideals are optional. This requires removing discretion at the moment of action. Discretion invites debate. Debate favors comfort. Standards eliminate debate. They decide in advance. This requires consistency. Standards that apply most days are not standards. They are preferences. Preferences change with mood. Standards do not. This requires acceptance of discomfort. Discomfort is not evidence of misalignment, it is evidence of enforcement. When standards are raised, resistance appears. That resistance is expected. Do not interpret resistance as failure. Interpret it as recalibration. This also requires restraint. Do not compensate for missed standards with excessive effort later. Overcorrection destabilizes the system. Standards require steady enforcement, not punishment. This requires honesty. Standards cannot be aspirational. They must reflect what will be enforced daily. Inflated standards collapse quickly. Collapsed standards reduce trust. Trust must be rebuilt through consistency. This requires patience. Results lag behind enforcement. Do not lower standards during this delay. Lowering standards resets the system. Finally, this requires ownership. No external force will enforce standards for you. Motivation will not appear to assist. Standards operate independently of feeling. They require action without negotiation. This is not about becoming rigid. It is about becoming reliable. Reliability removes dependence on motivation. When standards are enforced, motivation becomes irrelevant. Execution becomes automatic. That automation is the objective. Standards do not inspire, they function. And functioning consistently is what produces change.
When standards are enforced consistently, outcomes change structurally, not quickly, reliably. Progress stops depending on emotion. Results stop fluctuating. Execution becomes predictable. Predictability allows planning. Planning allows leverage. Time begins to compound instead of reset. When standards replace motivation, missed days decrease. Recovery accelerates. Setbacks no longer erase momentum. They are absorbed. This creates durability. Durability is not intensity, it is continuity. Most people never experience this phase because standards are never stabilized long enough. When standards hold, identity adjusts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You begin to see yourself as someone who meets requirements. That shift reduces internal resistance. Resistance drains energy. Lower resistance increases capacity. Capacity makes effort feel lighter. Tasks that once required motivation now require compliance. Compliance is easier to maintain. Opportunities expand quietly, not because ambition increased, because reliability made participation possible. Higher standards filter behavior automatically. Low-value actions fall away. Time is reallocated without conscious effort. This creates margin.
Margin allows growth without overload. Without standards, motivation spikes and collapses. With standards, output stabilizes. The gap widens over time. One system compounds, the other oscillates. This divergence is not dramatic, it is permanent. Years later, the difference is obvious, not in intensity, in results. Standards do not create excitement, they create trajectories. Trajectories determine outcomes. This is the long-term consequence.
You don't lack motivation, you lack standards. Motivation was never meant to lead, it was meant to respond. When motivation is asked to carry structure, it fails. Not because you are weak, because the system is misconfigured. Standards correct that. They define what happens regardless of how you feel. They remove negotiation. They eliminate daily debate. When standards are clear, action becomes automatic. Automatic action produces consistency. Consistency produces results. This does not feel exciting. That is the point. Standards are not designed to inspire, they are designed to function. Motivation comes and goes, standards remain. If execution depends on motivation, progress will always be unstable. If execution depends on standards, progress becomes inevitable. This is not about becoming harsher, it is about becoming precise. Lower standards create comfort. Comfort reduces output. Higher standards create pressure. Pressure creates adaptation. Adaptation creates capability. Capability removes reliance on motivation. The system does not care how driven you feel. It responds to what is enforced. Enforce low standards, and motivation will always feel missing. Enforce high standards, and motivation becomes irrelevant. That is the rule. And once understood, it changes everything.